Yep, we're live now. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think I can then begin. Right, so welcome everyone to this virtual meeting, COVID safe virtual meeting of the Loughborough Area Committee for Tamworth Borough Council. Right, there are a number of things I need to remind you of before we start with the items in the agenda. So first of all, please note this meeting is being live streamed and recorded, and the recording will be made available on the Council's website following the meeting. Under the openness of local government body regulations, people may film or record this meeting, and this is outside the Council's control. However, people wishing to film or record meetings should do so in a way that does not disrupt the business of the meeting. Also, so the meeting is not disturbed, could I ask everyone present to either turn off your mobile phone or switch it to silent to ensure that the meeting is distraction-free. And also, I've got a little warning here. Can I remind everyone this is a public meeting, so please conduct yourself in an appropriate manner. So thank you. So I now have to ask everyone to confirm verbally that they're present and that they can see and hear the proceedings. So I'll just do a roll call alphabetically, so you can confirm they can see and hear the meeting. So first of all, Councillor Baldwin.
Thanks, Chair. I can hear and see the meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Bradshaw. You're on mute.
Sorry, I said I can see and hear.
Thank you.
See and hear the meeting. Thank you.
Councillor Campsell.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I can see and hear everything that's going on.
Brilliant. Councillor Draycott.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I can see and hear the proceedings.
Councillor Forrest.
Thank you, Chair. I confirm that I can both see and hear the proceedings.
Thank you. Councillor Goddard.
I can see and hear the proceedings.
Thank you. And I can see and hear proceedings. So, Councillor Christine Harris.
Yes, I apologise. My surgery rang me up at the same time. I'm here and I can hear you.
Thank you, no problem. Councillor Keith Harris.
Thank you, Chair. I can see and hear.
Brilliant, thank you. Councillor Mercer.
I can see and hear.
Thank you. Councillor Mia.
Thank you, Chair. I can see and hear.
Do we have Councillor Morgan? Nope. Councillor Parsons.
Yes, I can see and hear.
Councillor Parton.
Good evening. I can see and hear you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Smidowitz.
Yes, I can hear and see you.
Thank you. Councillor Tillotson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I can see and hear.
Thank you. And finally, Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I can see and hear the proceedings.
Right, I'm going to ask now the other attendees to confirm verbally that they're present and they can see and hear proceedings. Can't see on the screen, do I? Councillor Boker? She's my list. No.
I'm also here, Chair.
Oh, did I miss you out?
You did.
It's not the list here. Okay, I do apologise. Councillor Bailey, you can see it here. Okay, thank you.
Chair, can I say, I don't know if Councillor Parsons, I didn't hear his name, but...
I read it out.
Did you?
Yes, I confirmed.
Oh, sorry, I missed it then.
Okay. Right. Head of Leisure and Culture, Sylvia Wright.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I can see and hear proceedings.
Right. And then we've got Head of Financial Services, Leslie Tansey.
Chair, I can see and hear the proceedings.
Thank you. Head of Strategic Support, Adrian Ward. No, yeah, yes. On mute. Adrian Ward, can you see and hear?
He was here.
He was, yes, he was. He's listed there, but he's on mute. Okay, Head of Planning and Regeneration, Richard Bennett.
Evening, members. I can see and hear.
Thank you. And of course, Democratic Services Officer Ed Brown.
Thank you, Chair. I can see and hear.
Right. So is Adrian, can he see and hear? Just technical problems there. Okay. I'll have to move on. Right. The first item of business. Oh, there we go. Adrian. Oh, it appeared and disappeared. Oh, we suddenly got Verity Graham appeared. It's not on my list. So
sorry, Chair, I'm having connection problems, but at the moment I can see and hear.
Okay, thank you. And Verity Graham?
I can see and hear.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I think that's everyone. Have I missed anyone out? Nope. Excellent. I shall proceed. Item 1 is the appointment of a vice chair to be the replacement for vice chair. So I'm going to ask members of the committee, well, it says here via a roll call for nominations for the role of vice chair, which seems a bit kind of cumbersome. So would that be okay just to ask for people to raise their hands if they've got anyone to nominate? Would that be okay, Adrian? That'd be clear.
Chair, I think the intention is to ask people if they want to nominate anybody, and obviously anybody that's nominated will have to be seconded, and if there's more than one, we'll have to then give people the opportunity to vote for which of the candidates they want to support.
Yeah, but so any raise your hand? I see Councillor Mia, you've raised your hand.
Thank you, Chair. Can I propose Councillor Ward, please?
Right. I'll also ask if there's any further nominations before I look for seconder, or grant for a seconder for that, then I'll go further.
I would second that.
Right, thank you, Councillor Harris. Any other nominations? I'm not seeing any raised hands for any further nominations. Okay, I will then move on to put the vote to a roll call. So I'm just going to go through each one to see, I suppose, because there's only one name on the nomination, it'll simply be, Adrian, will it simply be just agree or disagree or abstain? Is that right?
Yes.
There's only one name?
Yes. If there's only one name, Chair, it'll just be for against and abstain.
Okay, I'll go forward with that then. Councillor Baldwin?
For, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Bradshaw?
For, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Cancel?
For, Chair.
Well, it's not listed here. Councillor Bailey, you're not my script, but I see you in the script.
For, Chair. Happy to support.
Thank you. Did I say Councillor Cancel? Yeah. Yeah.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Draycott?
For, Chair.
Councillor Forrest? Has Councillor Forrest disappeared?
No, she's muted, Chair.
All right, you're muted. Sandy, you're muted. Still muted. You're for. I can definitely say for. Yeah. First syllable. Yeah. Okay, for. Thank you for that, Councillor Goddard.
For.
Right. Suppose I'm next to the list. So I'll say for. Councillor Christine Harris. Oh,
yes, for.
Councillor Keith Harris.
For.
Councillor Mercer.
For.
Councillor Mia.
For.
Councillor Parsons.
For.
Councillor Parton.
For.
Councillor Smirowitz.
For.
Councillor Tillotson.
For, Chair.
And I suppose you can vote for yourself, can you? Technically, Councillor Ward.
I'll abstain, Chair. Thank you.
Right. Okay, thanks very much. So I presume that's de facto unanimous. Right, so I can confirm that Councillor Ward is now appointed Vice Chair of the Loughborough Area Committee for the remainder of the council year 21-22. And moving on to item 2, apologies. Do we have any apologies? I see no apologies. Okay. I've received none. Okay, then moving straight forward to item 3, then minutes of the previous meeting. Is the committee content to receive the notes and minutes? Now, do I have to do a roll call for that, or can I just ask for comments?
I think, Chair, if you just ask people who aren't content, if they have any issues they want to raise, and if nobody says anything, we'll assume it's all okay.
Okay, anyone, any comments on the minutes? I'm seeing no raised hands, so I will take it that people are content, and therefore we will confirm the minutes. Okay, thanks for that. And moving on quickly to item 4, which is disclosures of pecuniary and personal interests. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary or personal interests by any of the members? I'm seeing no indication that's the case.
Sorry, Chair.
We do. Councillor Mayor. Or Councillor Mayor?
Yes, Chair. I'm a council appointed representative on Fairham Hall, which is mentioned on the report. So it's a personal, non-prejudicial interest.
Thanks for highlighting that. And Councillor Ward.
Similarly, I'm a trustee at Gorse Covert Community Centre, which is also mentioned in the report. So I also have a personal interest.
Okay, thanks for highlighting that. Any other declarations? I see no other declarations.
Yes.
Oh, Councillor Christine Harris.
Yes, sorry. I'm also a ward representative of Fairham Hall.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. There's no further declarations. I can move on to item 5, which is questions under scrutiny committee procedures, 12.8, and I can confirm no questions were submitted. So can then move on to the first major item of this, which is the Loughborough Special Expense Draft Budget 21-22. Now, before I ask Leslie Tansey to introduce report, I'm just to highlight what I'm going to do is then ask for the report, then I'll open up to questions, and then I'll ask you if you have any formal comments or suggestions in the draft budget. Now I'm going to have to check, with the wording is a bit ambiguous to me, check with Adrian here. If there's a formal comment or suggestion, we then have to have a vote in that, and that becomes a committee's formal suggestion attached to the draft. Is that right, Adrian?
Yes, through you, Chair. As a consultative committee, the committee is being asked to obviously consider the draft proposed Loughborough Special Expenses budget. If the committee wants to make any responses as part of the consultation, they have to be the collective responses of the committee as a whole. So if any councillors want to propose a response, it would then have to be seconded, and there'd have to be a vote as to whether the majority of the committee supported that comment. Obviously, if councillors want to make individual comments, they can do that as part of the more general consultation, but this is a seeking view of the collective Loughborough Area Committee as a whole, Chair.
Thanks for that clarification. Yeah, that's what it seemed to me, that as individual councillors, you can of course make any comments you wish, but if you wish it to be a formal response from this committee, then it'll have to be formally worded, carefully worded, and then it'll be put to a vote if you want it to be included as a formal comment or suggestion to come from this committee, just to highlight that. So can I pass over to Leslie Tansey to introduce the report?
Yes, certainly. So this is item 6. It's the Loughborough Special Expenses Draft Budget for 22-23. The final Loughborough Special Report will go to Cabinet on the 10th of February 22. Page 4 highlights the savings that have been proposed as part of the draft general fund budget, which also impact on the Loughborough special budget, a net saving of 27.8k for 22-23. The Loughborough special rate on page 4 is a proposed increase of 1.99 on this year's rate, a rate of 79.53. The 1.99 increase is lower than current inflation rates of CPI, 3.1% and RPI. Appendix 1 shows at the bottom of page 5 the council tax base is an estimated figure of number of properties of 17,150. That is an estimated figure, and the council tax base figures have just been released yesterday, so that the growth on that council tax figure is actually lower at 16,923. So that adjustment will be adjusted in the final budget. Final budget report. So myself and the officers that are present tonight will take any questions on any of the notes and comments provided in the report on pages 6 and 7 of the report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Is there any questions any member wishes to ask or any clarifications? Councillor Mear.
Thank you, Chair. I just a couple of points for clarification. I'll take the last point that Leslie raised there. Does that mean that there's less houses have been built than we assumed in the Loughborough area? Hence the number of properties is now 16,923. And if so, what areas have let us down? And I think, is Richard here? I think Richard's here. Great. But then I've got two more specific questions. One regarding the Thorpeacre hub, which we are now taking out, and it's going to be a massive saving, but it's a loss to that area. And you know, why has it not proceeded? We've put the money aside for so many years, really, and then to have promised the community a hub and then not got it across the line, and then we take it all the money away. And then obviously I've declared interest, so I'll just be minimal on this one. The savings for Gorse Covert and Fearing Hall, the minuscule amounts of money, but the massive amounts of money to the centres themselves. Why have we decided to do this and make this kind of decision at this moment in time? Thank you, Chair. Those are the questions.
Thank you, Chair. I can attempt to ask the first question, and then I can perhaps pass you on to one of the other officers for more detailed sort of information. So in terms of the actual, the estimated base rate growth, that was an estimate that we put forward for this draft budget. The rate will stay the same, even though the base is lower, because we have actually got an adjustment in the accounts of 82,000. So that 82,000 will actually drop down to 64,000 just by having that rate change. So we will have some extra money in the Loughborough expense account. However, I think due to sort of COVID, and you'll see we've put things in the savings, such as increase in cemetery income and some other increases in the income lines. So we've obviously got to protect the actual reserve or amount of money that we've actually got in the Loughborough special account for sort of future sort of overspends, underspends, to just retain the rate at 1.99%.
Chair, just before Leslie moves on or passes it on to other officers there, does that mean that 64,000 is really an underspend? And if this committee, sorry, apologies, proposes to spend that money, it will be available to be spent if that's the case?
That 64,000 is an underspend. In terms of we normally retain that for future sort of overspends or shortfalls in income for going forward, because obviously the rate at 1.99 is fairly low. And like I think I've said, the inflation rates and salary rates are coming in higher than those. So we try and keep it sort of the account is a rolling balanced account over a 2-year period.
Okay, thank you. Soph.
Okay. Is that it?
Yeah, sorry, I had the other point about Gorse Cover and Thorpeacre.
I'll come in with that.
Yes, thank you.
So with regard to Thorpeacre Hub, myself and my team have been working with the Thorpeacre Residents Association for about 6 years on this particular project. Trying to secure a location for the venue has proved quite challenging. There was 106 money that was secured for this, which we managed to extend on several occasions. But as things have gone through, we've invested quite a lot of time working with Tara, trying to get them to become part of the register with Charities Commission. We secured funding through Loughborough University alongside facilities grants at the Borough Council. The group we've worked really closely to support, but unfortunately it was just something that took a lot of time. We worked eventually to get the Scouts, looked at having it hosted at the Scouts Hut, putting in a new mobile unit there. That took a long time to progress on both sides and kept delaying this with a lot of officer time spent on it. It got to the point where we thought we were going to sign lease agreements and subleases, went to solicitors and tried to get that sorted. Eventually we met up with Tara, who became TACA as part of the process to put them in good stead for the community hub. And it was felt that there was not capacity within the group to progress the project. And we tried to look at extending things, but couldn't. And it was agreed that we were going to withdraw from the hub because having that building was escalating in costs and became untenable in terms of the provision of money secured for it. It was no longer viable. We continue to work with Tara, and part of the university money has been retained by Tara, and they've got £5,000 from the university to continue to help build up membership, do some neighbourhood surveys to reassess what's going on in the community and see if things have changed over the 6 years since the last one. So that's where it stands with that, and it was in agreement with Tara TACA. It was in agreement with them that they felt that they weren't in a position to continue with this project. I can take any questions on that.
Thanks for that. Is anyone want to make any further comments on that? Nope. Okay. So thank you for that.
With regard to the Fearon Hall and Gorse Covert, as you'll be aware, within the organisation, we've been looking at trying to find areas of savings, and a 5% reduction across the strategic partners was proposed. We are just in the process of a cabinet report going in the new year for the following 2 years, with proposals following the application process for 8 strategic partners to go forward with amounts that are representative of within that 5% reduction overall. Any questions on that one?
Chair, sorry, can I come in here?
Yes.
I can understand that we have this written policy or unwritten policy of reducing it by 5%, but I think the circumstances we're under and the intense pressure some of these community centres are facing, but also the services that they're providing to the most vulnerable in our community, I think it sends out the wrong message that at a time when we have a 60-odd thousand pound underspend in the Loughborough special rates we're carrying forward for potential future overspends, we've decided to cut £2,500, which are absolutely measly. People will call us Scrooge, honestly. And I think if nothing else today, that's one thing I think we shouldn't put something to cabinet to say actually this is not something we support, or wherever the recommendations go. Sorry.
thanks for that. Councillor Christine Harris, you.
Yes, yes, I would support some of what Councillor Mayor has just said. It's very disappointing because for the Fair and Hall, I already said that I am part of that community. That they are. This is the last real chance that they will have over the next 4 or 5 years to be able to gather themselves, and they have then got to be standing on their own feet. And therefore, as I say, it is very disappointing that now we have to hear that you're cutting out our money. And of course, on the notes, all of this will be subject to approval by the Cabinet in January. And I would strongly ask that we kept that money, to those community centres. We desperately need that. It's all very well thinking about it at this moment. Yes, I know, but this is a minimal amount, and therefore I think we could leave it this time. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Okay. Now, following those comments from Councillor Mayor, Councillor Harris, do you want to make a formal suggestion that goes from this committee?
Chair, we can do, but I think we'll hear from all the other councillors and then we can formulate something. Is that okay?
Right, okay. That was my original plan. So what I'll do is I'll get all the questions, then we'll just revisit at the end of the questions and see if there's any formal comments that wish to come forward. Thanks for that. Councillor Smidowitz.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Two points that one might be possible to answer. I don't know the other one. You may want to defer me. First of all, cameras. I think I heard you say there were 9 cameras for the Warwick Way estate. Correct me if I'm wrong. But can I ask how are the decision of where to put a camera actually made? Who makes it? What sort of evidence do you look for? Is it noise? Is it attacks? Drugs? What sort of contributes as evidence for you to decide that a camera is needed? That's the first question. And the second question was on allotments. As we've been mentioning S106 money and allotments, I always thought allotments, there were very, very few and far between of places where they could be put. So I am curious if somebody is offering S106 money for an allotment in Loughborough, where on earth it could possibly go. So those are the questions, Chair.
Thank you for that. What also wishes to answer?
I can't give you the full knowledge of the CCTV, but there is a due process that's followed with regard to where it can be facing, because obviously there's privacy rules and regulations. Those cameras were funded through the Safer Streets project, which was run last year, and quite an extensive work with police and other organisations went into deciding where those cameras go. I can see if there's a definition of how that process is done, but it's a partnership agreement as to where those will be, and it will be based on evidence that has come through from different things. In addition, it also is based on whether the polls can support them, and whether Leicestershire County Council approve the usage of their lampposts for the process. So it's a whole host of things, and some of it can literally be as simple as the post not being able to support the camera technology. I can't help you with allotments though, sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Verity.
Any further questions, Councillor Smidowitz?
No, I just wondered whether somebody else could help with allotments. Richard,
is that something we could take back to Matt Bradford as a question? Chair.
Yes, I think that's because unfortunately, of course, Mark can't be here this evening, so it might be
Is
something to
Richard
go back.
trying to answer me?
I was trying to say something, Councillor Sminovitz.
Yeah, I thought you were.
Chair, if I may.
Okay.
I'm not responsible for open spaces and allotments, but I think if Matt Bradford was here this evening, he would say that there is the open spaces strategy, which sets out where all the existing allotments are and where the need and demand is for new allotments. And I suspect he'd point you to that. As to whether there's any locations which he has in mind to provide further allotment space in Loughborough, I can't answer that, I'm afraid. That is really one for Matt. And I know that there are areas which have been looked at, but I don't know how far advanced he is in those deliberations and investigations.
No, thank you, Richard. I actually don't want one, but I just need to know where they might have gone if I'll ask him, but thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, Councillor, do you want us to kind of formally ask back for Matt to respond to that in due course?
Well, others might find it of interest because it is relating to a specific planning application, which I don't want to go into, obviously, but I'm curious.
Okay, because could we ask then that to be taken back to Matt to
Yes,
provide the
that would be
information?
helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that. Councillor Parton.
At the previous Loughborough Area Committee, there was a point raised regarding Christmas lights and the cost in the town centre, and it was queried that the contract was going to be changed over, and there was a part of the cost was actually the cost of the contractors with the lights. Now, given I've got a proposal that given that we are looking to save money from the community side of Loughborough, that we actually look to via some of the money and save money and reduce the money we spend on the Christmas lights, if that means reducing them, and also the Loughborough in Bloom expenditure, and we instead use that money in the more on the community centre side in Loughborough. Personally speaking, find that more, that's my suggestion, that's more, that they're two big Loughborough mainstays, but at the same time, our community centres are our hubs scattered around the town, and they should receive as much funding as possible. And it's understood that the community side of the council has suffered from some budgetary and staff losses. So that's one way we could do it. So that would be my suggestion. The second point, Chair, which I may be able to help with, is that we had a planning application in Loughborough, Southfields, and part of the S106 agreement was to provide new allotments because allotment space was lost in Southfields, and I was told that the area was in Shelthorpe, which I interpret to be around the Park Road, Shelthorpe Road area. So I think that's where the allotments are planned for.
Thank you for that. Does anyone have any comments based on what Councillor Parton has said? No. Okay.
Through the chair, do you want me to comment on the contract, the festive?
Well, I wanted to, if Wonder Sylvia, if you had anything to say about the nature of the contract and what monies possibly could be saved. Yeah.
Basically, the festive light budget includes the actual taking up and putting up and taking down. It includes all of the structural testing. It includes the license. It includes the maintenance. It includes religious festivals. So there's a number of things and all of the electrical costs associated with that. We will be going out to tender next year to look at the festive light, to look at the contract for putting the lights up and down. Currently, we spend 25,000 on that contract, and that includes all the costs of the installing and the maintenance of those lights. Obviously, we won't know until we go out to the market whether we can get a reduction in that cost, or it will be dependent on the market when we go out next year.
Is it something that's scalable? Is it, or is it the cost of putting? No, it doesn't matter how many lights you have. It's one of those things. It's.
I wouldn't know unless we asked a question whether we actually, at the moment, the scheme is the scheme, and so if we went out to tender, we would go out with the current scheme that we've got. So if we were to reduce that scheme, I don't know whether it would reduce the cost or not.
Okay.
Sorry, I can't.
No, it's sometimes difficult to know how scalable these things are.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Draycott.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to find some more information about 4 of the other items on the expenses. First of all, note number 1, which refers to Loughborough CCTV, which is at the bottom of page 5. I have to say I had great difficulty understanding these notes. To me, they've been done in shorthand, and if you know the background, perhaps they make sense. But looking at note 1, the only conclusion I could come to is that £10,000 to reduce the casual salaries. So we must be losing staff then in the CCTV centre place, which is very important work. Cameras, they not only help the council, they help the police, they also help with identification, etc. So my first question is, could we have a little bit more information about what note 1 actually means, Chair?
Thank you. Any comments from any officer? No.
Certainly mention the casual salary budget. So there's a budget for permanent staff that we have that man the CCTV room 24/7, and then we have another budget called casual salaries, which is for overtime payments or sort of any extra salaries really. So in terms of taking people out of that 24/7 service, that's not the case. I think the officer that deals with the CCTV is best placed to answer to provide further information on that. But it's a reduction in a budget that's perhaps wasn't always used. So we have got permanent staff manning those CCTV cameras, and as you can see, there's been an increase of 45 cameras in the borough overall. So again, further information on that, the officer that looks after that service can certainly give you some further information on that.
You see, the problem, Chair, if I may, with that is that as a committee, we're supposed to give some views based on the information that we've got. And if we haven't got all of the information, that's very difficult, and that puts us at a disadvantage when it goes to Cabinet and to the Budget Council meeting. Just based on the information that we have got, Chair, I can see permanent staff will be more busier because of the increased numbers of cameras. But then I can also see what's essential is some casual staff, because when you've got events going on, for example, the fair, Christmas lights, I'm sure that's when they're actually needed and will be needed with the extra cameras. So, Chair, if we could have some more information on item 1 about the cameras, the implications, and what will happen without the casual salary staff, that would be useful for members as we go forward. So if I could move on to my second question, which is what Councillor Parton also touched on. At this meeting last year, we asked for further information about Note 8. And actually the question was asked how much of that then 353,000 was Loughborough in Bloom. The way council finances are, the situation we face with the pandemic, right? Basic bread and butter services, if I can put it that way, are being cut, which has also been mentioned tonight about community centres and hubs. Yet we seem to still be going on with the grandiose schemes. And at one time, Loughborough in Bloom, Christmas decorations, etc., were lovely and great, but we are losing services and difficult decisions need to start being made. Because if, as a councillor, I can't even get leaves swept off a street or get housing issues served, I know what my preference would be. So I'd like a better breakdown of Note 8 again, please, particularly how much is spent on Loughborough in Bloom, and a breakdown of how that Loughborough in Bloom money is spent, please. So that's my second question, Chair.
Thanks very much. Verity, you want to come in, do you?
It was just Tim McCabe sends his apologies. Unfortunately, he can't make this evening. He's oversees the CCTV room. But I am aware that the CCTV at one stage had quite a high turnover. They've been very stable for the last 18 months, and casuals haven't been required. And within the staffing ratas, it does allow for some duplication if needed. But on the whole, it operates with one person within that. During COVID, that's been particularly happening and manage the system because we've had to have people working on their own in the because of the size of the office and space. We can only have one person operating at one time, but I'm sure they can respond to different, and I can get Tim to give more information if required, but the casual staff budget hasn't been used in recent years, and we have a very stable team in the CCTV.
Thank you for that.
Can I come back on that, Chair? Yes. Because every time as a committee we look at these papers, which we can't change or alter at all, right? And we're told that things are always tight, and that's the reason why we can't make amendments or changes or suggestions. Yet we just heard that there's £10,000 been sitting in a budget for years, not being used, right? We don't get all the facts, and we should do at these meetings, Chair, because that money could have been used for other purposes. It's like the Thorpe Acre hub, where we had all that money in this budget for years, knowing that it was never going to get spent and could have been used on services rather than filling holes in budgets, Chair. So not very pleased with that response. And yes, my Thorpe Acre item had been addressed elsewhere. So that just leaves me with item 15, which is Loughborough Cemetery. And I found this quite difficult to read again, Chair. And I would just ask for some clarification, because it talks about a review of burial charges, but that an option has been included of £10,000 to increase the fees and charges budget. So what does that mean exactly, please, Chair?
Thank you. Is any officer any comment on that? Leslie Tanti.
Yeah, I mean, as part of the budget process, each of the heads of service were asked to come up with some options for changes as part of the general fund budget. And this was one area that was put forward and discussed by members. In terms of the actual fees and charges, it says a review is going to be carried out. So, and that's in Matt Bradford's area again, that he will then take a paper on this, which will then be discussed. So it's not actually set in stone what that review is, but it is in the budget paper going forward.
Thank you. So does that mean an increase in burial charges? Is that what we're looking at? That's going to be included in the budget?
I think yes is the answer.
Well, I just think that the time we're living in, to be penalising people with friends and relatives and everybody, the terrible situation we're in, I just think that's a really unpleasant. One of the worst things that a council can do is actually increase burial charges.
Leslie, is this actually to do with people who live outside of the borough? It's not actually for residents in the borough, Councillor Draycott. The trouble is Matt Bradford's not here and he actually has the information.
Well, I think then in that case, again, if we could have that information and what it means, because I seem to remember similar type wording in a previous year's budget, and we had no information, nothing was available. We were told we were going to get a paper during the year, and that's exactly what it turned out to be. And I just think that we should have all of the information at the start of a budget, and that members should know everything that they're going to be voting for, not find out during the year, Chair. So again, if that information could be found and circulated to members before the Cabinet meeting, please. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. No further comments on that, is there? Okay, moving on. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chair. It was just a point I wanted recording, really, going back to the community centres and the strategic partnership funding. Obviously, as a trustee at Gorse Covert, I know the financial challenges that Gorse Covert has been under over the last 18 months in particular. Considering the fact that the Thorpe Acre hub is now not going forward and Thorpe Acre is adjacent to Gorse Covert is also likely to be picking up a lot of the slack in terms of support groups and other wraparound services from residents in Garendon Ward as well as Dishley Ward. So it just seems really illogical to be reducing the funding for a centre that at this point in time that's also picking up the slack from a hub that can't be established. So I just wanted that point noting, really. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. No comments on that. I can move to Councillor Parsons.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just a couple of points, really, Mrs. Tansey. Last year, when we presented these figures, we did present them with the district capital charges column, which means we can't compare like for like in terms of the totals this year. So I'm at a disadvantage in not being able to talk about the figures in totality, and therefore that makes a big difference to this conversation. The second thing is I think we do need to help members understand that this is largely a big juggling act, particularly the bottom of the presentation. So retrospectively, we're still making adjustments to the 1920 Loughborough special expenses because we have to juggle the numbers at the base of this budget to make the figures work for the 1.99% against the number of houses built and the divisor. So if I look at the sheet as it's presented this year, I could get really excited and go, gosh, there's £82,600 unallocated money. We've got that from the adjustment from 2021. We as a committee could actually do something with that. The reality is, I know that's not true, because by the time you have to adjust for the divisor, by the time we get to the year end and all the other figures adjust, and we have to do that retrospectively backwards 2 years. So we're having to adjust the 1920 figures retrospectively 2 years back to make the 2021 column work, to make the 2022, the 22-23 column work. So we just need to understand. I think we need to be much more honest with all the members here, not you personally, and in no way is it any personal comment. It's my observation of having sat in this room with this budget. I understand this is a game we play at the bottom of this budget to make the numbers balance, and our ability to actually make any coherent decision about this is gone, because we can't balance a budget retrospectively when we know in advance it's going to change by the number of houses built, the divisor changes, and therefore anything we do can't be held to. And we've got to get this message through to all of us as a committee here. And then perhaps we might be able to tackle the debate more meaningfully and actually get something done, because we sit here and I sit here and I just tick the box every year for the Loughborough expenses, for a bunch of titles that I've had no chance to change. And when I get excited, when I see a bottom line of 82,000 that I could spend, I actually know I can't. It's not real money. And by the time we get to the back end, depending on the divisor, it could be a completely different number and could be a negative. And then we're going to be adjusting numbers elsewhere from the previous year to get back to the 1.99%. Now, we've all got to understand that to have a better debate about this subject.
If I can just comment on the first point about the capital charges, we did take that out too, because we don't actually, the capital charges were in there last year for sort of full information of and that is an accounting entry. Don't actually, the capital charge is not a budget that we actually charge that expense to. So I think for clarity and going forward, the presentation is a lot clearer than last year. I take your point about the adjustment, and yes, we'll have to, whatever the outturn is for 2021 accounts, it will get adjusted in this rate. All I can say is that as a council, we're putting those services, where we're actually providing those services with a 1.99% increase, so a very, very small increase on those budgets, smaller than the inflation. In terms of actually changing those services, I mean, that's something that as a committee, collectively as part of the budget consultation, that could be something that could be put forward, but obviously it is an officer member decision. So that's something that operationally, if there are some budgets there, like the Britain in Bloom and the festive lights, that you feel as a committee would be best placed putting that money or that budget into something more worthwhile in the community hubs, that's something that could be put forward. I think we've obviously got a budget that's set for the Loughborough ratepayers, and we try as a council to keep that rate as low as we possibly can, and we obviously don't want any large overspends building up in that account, so we have got a balancing act on this particular account. Hopefully that's answered some of the question. Thank you, Councillor Parsons.
Any further comments, Councillor Parsons?
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay, thanks for that. Councillor Mayor?
Chair, I take on board what Councillor Parsons is saying, in that we don't have much say, and when we come to an underspend, then it's not for us there to spend. But actually, if you go back a few cycles, we did spend some underspends. I think we had £2,000 a year in Loughborough, in a Loughborough only community fund. That seems to have been withdrawn. I think it was a couple of years ago it was withdrawn. And then we put the voluntary and community sector development officer in as well 1 year, I believe, and that was a huge amount of money. So we can spend some of that money, and I understand Councillor Parsons is correct. You know, it is a balancing act. It's, you know, This is just a budget. We don't know how it will finalise and finish at, but that's what we've been consulted on. And if that's what we've been consulted on, I think that's only what we can make a decision on. But one thing I didn't, I'll be honest, I didn't spot the 82,000 because I just took it as adjustment, and I didn't adjust my thinking to think it was an underspend. And I want to make a proposal, and I haven't discussed this with my group, so it's not a group decision or anything like that. So this is just a ward councillor from Leamington proposing it, is that we use some of that underspend, maybe £2,000 per councillor this year, as in this budget year, and we allocate councillors that pot of money to be able to spend in their ward on whatever little prep projects that they need to get done, notice boards, signs, or whatever it may be, similar to what the Highways County Fund is, which the Highways County Fund is a massive amount of money, 25,000 per councillor. But this will give us, give us as councillors something that we can, give back to the community, rather than having to go to offices, rather than having to apply for community grants and so on and so forth each and every time. So potentially that could be a proposal. 36,000 only. That's half of the underspend, and the other half can go towards adjustments in future year. And touch wood, as the economy gets bigger, better, and more houses get built, then that divisor will start increasing. Yes, costs will go up as well, but the divisor will increase, and we won't lose as much money. And I say this because Loughborough isn't a parish area, and if we were a parish area, the 1.99% wouldn't apply to us. We could set our own budget and deal with all the things that we'd want to. And some of these parish councils are charging over and above the 1.99%. I'm not saying that what we propose, but we won't be constrained by the 1.99%, because this is actually part of the overall council's budget. It just split that way just to appease us, I think, more than anything. But let's try. My proposal is let's try this and see what happens next year, because I think we could do well with spending some money in our own wards, and we're best placed to work with our residents to find out what those areas of need are. And £2,000 isn't a lot of money, but it could be something that get something fixed, whatever it may be, street furniture or whatever it may, a new bench or something like that in an area of our ward where we want it. Thank you.
Leslie, do you want to say something or not?
Just comment on that. I think I just need to say that 82,000, which will reduce down to 64 once we put the revised council tax base in, it is an adjustment, because we can't add any more to the general fund as a budget, because it will actually increase the general fund in totality. So we can move budgets around, like I suggested, there can be environments of budget, but we can't actually add any more budgets into the whole of the general fund. So I think if you actually read on page 4, it does say that we've actually got ongoing savings and one-off pressures within the general fund, which form part of the Loughborough special expenses. Now, this is an adjustment item from year to year, so we can't just tonight say we're going to add any more into Loughborough special. We can do some environments within the general fund as a whole. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. So there's no further comments on that issue. Can I move to Councillor Campbell?
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Yeah, I just want to take exception to Councillor Draycott telling people that the money sitting in the Thorpe Acre hub money was never going to be used. What a load of rubbish. It was always going to be used. Things happened that prevented it, because we couldn't get charity status for a start. We tried for a year with officers helping us. We were turned down twice, which then made trustees liable if we weren't a charity sort of thing for the hub. And it frightened some of the trustees in signing the lease. Also, it meant we would have to use the hub every day to raise money, and then COVID came along and locked us all down, and that put trustees off from signing. But that money was always there for the use. so I wish you would not tell lies, sort of thing. And also, we're now working with the Thorpe Church and using their church hall. So we're doing our own events there, you know, sort of thing. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Chair, can I just come back on that for the record? Because Councillor Council comes to these meetings like I do. And for the last two budget meetings, the issue of Thorpe was mentioned. And it was clearly stated, I mean, it had been there for what, half a dozen years, 6 years, 7 years, I don't know, right? And every year we kept asking about it. And I remember last year, because it was quite clear the money was never going to be spent, that was a clear indication at the meeting that the money instead should be used to keep the town centre toilets open, right? And Councillor Campsall supported that, right? So no way was I threatening a viable situation, Chair. It was only because it was clearly indicated that that money wasn't going to be used, right? So I just want to place that on record. Thank you.
Thanks for that comment. Is there any further questions for officers? Oh, Councillor Christine Harris.
Well, I would like to just say finally that I support all of this, everyone that has supported the community centres. This money isn't just about giving them to have fun times or anything like that. This is now getting more and more serious. At the Fair and Hall, for example, they've got people on phones ringing people up, asking them if they're okay, trying to get people back into the community centres, because after the first lockdown, everyone was afraid. But now they're gradually coming back, but all of this needs to be maintained and supported. And that's why I don't think we should be cutting any money to the community centres. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions, comments? Okay, we've had a good number of kind of questions, and the officers have given their clarifications and explanations, and that's been really useful. Now, at this stage, I think we can perhaps move on to, does this committee want to make any formal comments from this committee or any suggestions from this committee? Thinking back some of the questions, there was questions like further clarification in certain items and so on. So is there any formal, any formal comments will have to be very carefully worded, formally proposed, seconded and voted upon. Councillor Mayor?
Yes, Chair. We did have that proposal at the beginning, I think, to not cut the funding, the £2,500 saving this year for course cover or Fair and Hall. So that would be a proposal for that not to go ahead.
I would support that. Seconded.
Right. So the wording would be what exactly that this committee believes that. Just trying to. You're on mute, Councillor Mayor. Joe, you're on mute.
Apologies, I thought I'd unmuted that. This proposal, the proposals of savings of £2,500 or the 5%, whichever we want to use, savings aren't rolled forward this year, or whatever the wordings are. If officers can help me on that one. Yeah, that's it really.
I would second that.
Right. Okay. So, Adrian,
I think we need some wording that in a form that can go to cabinet. So I don't think we can have. I think it needs to be more. The wording needs to be pinned down more accurately, Chair.
Okay, that's fine. Let's give it a go. That the proposed savings of £2,500 for course cover or Fair and Hall are not realised in this year's Loughborough special rates.
Sorry, is that an or an and, Councillor Meir?
Are not, sorry.
But you said Fear and Hall all Gorse covered.
Sorry, I was just reading that. Gorse cover and Fear and Hall.
So, Chair, could I suggest some wording and see if Councillor Meir is happy with this?
Yeah.
So the proposal is that there'll be no reduction in the budgets for Fear and Hall and Gorse Covert Community Centre in next year's Loughborough special rate budget.
I second that.
Okay, so as a
is Councillor Meir happy with that?
Yeah, I'm happy with that. Thank you.
Right, so as a suggestion from this committee, I'll put that to the votes. It's now been worded, proposed, and seconded. So
yeah, sorry, can I ask?
Chair. Yeah.
Sorry, because we've obviously got members of cabinet on this, and can I just ask Adrian? Obviously, I think members of cabinet probably can't actually, otherwise they're going to be prejudicing any decision.
Yes, that's a good.
I'm assuming you probably can't.
I'm thinking that through, Chair, because obviously that would effectively mean that cabinet members who are also Loughborough councillors would be superfluous in this from attending this item. You have to forgive me, Chair, because I'm thinking on my feet here.
Yeah.
So this is a collective response of the Loughborough Area Committee to Cabinet.
Yes.
And the Localism Act says in relation to predetermination that nothing you've done or said before a meeting can be taken that you have predetermined the matter. And obviously, if this recommendation goes forward as a consultation response to Cabinet, it will be accompanied by officer advice.
Yeah.
That will then allow Cabinet to make a further informed decision at some point in the future. So my advice would be that, given that this is only a consultation recommendation and not a final decision, and that Cabinet will have more information in future when they consider all of the responses from the consultation, that Cabinet members be allowed to vote, Chair.
Okay.
Adrian, just sorry, through you, Chair, if that's okay. I'd probably feel more comfortable, despite all of that, if maybe the cabinet members abstain purely on the basis that the fact that you very rarely, Adrian, have to actually think about these things, and I don't want to put you in a position where as soon as this meeting's finished, you then think about it further and think that possibly this is a problem. 4 out of 10 cabinet members being excused on this item would clearly risk quorum. So I think it would probably be safer if maybe cabinet members abstained.
I think that was a point I was going to make as well, because it seems, as chair, it seems odd that we're asking people to propose something that will then be they then have to review at a later date. Proposing them to themselves seems kind of odd. So so there is that option to abstain, as you've just heard. And
even worse, Chair, Adrian's just dropped out of the call. So
yes, yeah, I saw his
the shock of having to think about this.
I think in previous years, Jonathan, you're right, you did abstain in previous decisions, but obviously might have to wait for the morning trumpet to come back.
Just as an observation, I find it eccentric. We ask people to propose something for themselves to consider later. It seems odd. Anyway, I shall do a roll call, taking note that. Does somebody want to Councillor Parsons? Do you want to say something?
Sorry, Chair. I'd like to speak on the proposal, if I may, and I did have my hand up.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I didn't notice. Okay, Councillor Draycott.
Yeah, because the proposal needs to be put to the meeting for any comment, sort of thing. So in an ideal world, I'd have no problem with that proposal. The trouble is, I think there's other items on the agenda that are as equally as serious and will have as serious implications. So the wording that I would have preferred is along the lines, that we have concerns about all of the reductions in the budget. I'd also remind, Chair, that a lot of members have asked for a lot of information still. So we need that information as well to make valid judgments on matters, right? So, you know, I just have a problem with it just being those two. I have a problem with a lot of the reductions that are proposed in the budget. And I would have liked to have seen a more general comments going to Cabinet about concern about the various matters that have been raised tonight. And that if there were any savings that could be used, that they actually come back to the committee for a decision to be made. So I just think we need to hear the views of other members of the meeting first before a vote, Chair.
Right. This is an issue. Now, something has been formally proposed, seconded, and a wording formally put together. So I'm not. So I'm wondering whether we can. Agency, I'm wondering if we can revisit that, or whether a second proposal could be made that's more general.
I think, Chair, and apologies for my internet connection cutting out. I think, Chair, you have to vote on the proposal that's been seconded, and see what the outcome of that is. And obviously, if there are further proposals, they can then be moved after this. That this particular one has been dealt with.
Yeah, I mean, yes, just for clarification of the members, I always intended to go back to members for any additional suggestions or comments that can be formally worded. So because this has now been formally proposed and seconded, I will then go to a vote where, Councillor Parsons, do you want to, before I go to the vote, you want to make a comment?
Well, yes, I think before we go to vote, are we not able to comment on this proposal before we go to the vote?
Sorry. Okay. Okay, do you want to comment on the proposal?
Well, all I wanted to say was, you know, whether I agree or disagree with the intent of what people are saying, I can't support anything, because I can't just suddenly sit here, see a 5% reduction without seeing the budgets of the two facilities, without knowing the background, without knowing what's been agreed between our cabinet or the lead officer and these. Both facilities might be perfectly okay with a 5% cut in budget because they've got a really good business plan going forward this year. I'm the strongest and sternest advocate of looking at the budgets and the numbers, as I'm sure members here know, but I'm also not going to double take the cabinet or the lead member or whatever with information I don't have and budgets I can't see. That would be completely inappropriate.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you for that point. Councillor Parton, did you have anything you wish to say on this?
Thank you. There was some points of clarification. Obviously, it's understood, and this is bad news, that this committee is consultative. So when we talk about, when it's spoken about that things come back for our reassessment, that of course we'll always have to bear in mind that it's a consultative committee. The other point that I wanted to raise, whether it can be factored into this or as a separate issue, is the fact that I was formally wanting to raise that we would investigate and we would ask for investigations on the budget surrounding Loughborough in Bloom and the Christmas lights, in order that savings could then be transferred over to the more community aspects that we fund through the Loughborough Special Rate.
Thanks for that, Councillor Martin. I had actually kind of noted that was one of the suggestions, and I was going to come back to you on that if you wanted anything formal.
Yeah, thank you. That's very kind of you.
We already have a proposal on the table, and I will come back to the committee. So can we vote on this formal proposal, and then I'll come back if for any further comments further than that. Councillor Parsons, do you want to say something before we proceed? Councillor Parsons. No, sorry, just saw your hand up. Okay, right. Thanks for that. So we already have one formal proposal from Councillor Mia. So I can do a roll call from members on whether they wish this suggestion to be recorded to come from this committee. Also noting that there may be those that may wish to abstain or vote against. Councillor Baldwin, do you support the proposal from Councillor Mia?
Thank you, Chair. I do support the proposal.
Councillor Bailey?
Thank you, Chair. I wish to abstain.
Thank you for that. Councillor Bradshaw.
I think given the conversation that's gone on at the moment in time, I'd prefer to abstain, please, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that. Councillor Campbell.
I'm for.
Councillor Draycott.
I will vote for the proposal, Chair.
Councillor Forrest. Councillor Forrest. Is that a? I can't hear you. Four. Yeah, right. First syllable. Right. That's a 4. Councillor Goddard.
For.
I shall vote for the motion. Councillor Christine Harris.
For.
Councillor Keith Harris.
For.
Councillor Mercer.
Being on the cabinet, Chair, I will be abstaining.
Thank you for that. Councillor Mia.
For, Chair, thank you.
Councillor Morgan.
Abstaining because of cabinet.
Thank you for that. Councillor Parsons.
I'm abstaining for lack of information.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Parton.
For, please, Chair.
Councillor Smidowitz.
Yes, abstaining, Chair.
Councillor Tillotson.
For, Chair.
Councillor Ward.
For, Chair.
Right. So, Adrian, I take it that then passes as a suggestion to come from Loughborough Area Committee. Is Adrian with us?
Sorry, Chair, Adrian lost connection, but I've been taking the.
Right.
I've taken a record. Let me just count it up. Sorry. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 abstain.
Right, thanks for that. Now, there was a couple of other kind of points made. There was a lot, certainly from Councillor Draycott, on lack of clarity in some of the items, and I think it's something that Councillor Parsons has also made. So, Councillor Draycott, do you want any formal suggestions to come from this committee? On,
Yes, if I may. First of all, though, as I said, a lot of members have asked for further information. So I think Ed, who's taken the minutes or the notes from tonight's meeting, can put those together, and hopefully that will be forwarded to us in relatively good time. The point I'd like to make is that, yes, those 2 community buildings deserve to keep their funding, and because of the valuable work that they do. However, there are other projects and organisations, etc., in this special expenses paper that will be badly affected by proposals. So I'd like a sort of a second paragraph going to Cabinet along the lines that this meeting also had concerns regarding some of the other projects and the reductions being made to them. And could the budgets for the festive lights and the Loughborough in Broome be explored to see if any savings could possibly be made to mitigate the cuts to those other projects? Something along those lines, Chair.
thank you. Councillor Parton, that kind of ties into what you were asking about earlier.
So, if we could say, how about this? The committee would request that Cabinet and officers look to reduce the funding to Loughborough in Bloom and the Christmas lights in order to via the savings over to the areas that the committee felt were underfunded.
I think explore is a better word, because if there's contracts involved, we need to know the implications of that, etc. So I think explore is a better word.
Okay, I'll agree with you there, Councillor Draycott.
But otherwise, that's fine. Hopefully, we'd get some information back on that work and we could see the result of it, Chair. So my aim is to make sure that Cabinet realises we've looked at everything in this paper and that we're trying to find ways to help and the other amendment that's been agreed about the two larger centres that their funding be secured. You know, so hopefully it'll make a nice change if Cabinet do listen to us, Chair.
Adrian, did you have anything to comment on that? Read the wording.
Just Chair, I wonder if the expression, you know, that savings could be reallocated to other areas that the committee had concerns about. What are those other areas of funding that the committee is concerned about?
Well, the ones that have been raised in the meeting, Adrian.
Sorry, Councillor.
That we discussed during the meeting, like the CCTV cameras.
I think it would be helpful, Chair, if they could be listed.
Right, so we have to something a bit more concrete.
Well, I would list the CCTV reduction to be included. There was also mention about the cemetery charges, particularly. We're awaiting information, but I would put those two things in that wording, Chair, if I may.
So it's to explore whether savings for the lights in Loughborough and Bloom.
Sorry, Chair, I just raised my hand.
Yes,
sorry, Chair. I think nothing against anybody else proposing anything, but I think we're going to wait for more further information on the lights, but also the other point, I can't remember what Councillor Parson said, to see where we were spending that money and where the reductions, but I do remember that we used to spend over £100,000 on Christmas lights, and now we spend nearly half of that. So I'd be interested to know what savings we can make before we put that proposal to the Cabinet, because I think the proposal has to be something on this budget rather than potentially any future budgets, because even if we explore, we're not going to meet again this side of the budget being determined. That's the Loughborough Area Committee, I should say. So I don't see any merit in putting a proposal forward to Cabinet that potentially won't affect this budget. If it's a report that's going to come back to the next Loughborough Area Committee that we can have a look at, then I think then we can work with that one for the next budget going forward, because we'll have all the information and we can weigh up whether we want to look at reducing festive decorations and illuminations. And I'll tell you personally one thing, I'm not comfortable putting that message out there that actually I'm looking at Christmas time to reduce the budget of the Christmas lights. They look fantastic. I don't know if Verity is still here. Sorry, Sylvia is still here. Apologies, Sylvia. But yeah, they look fantastic. I was under them before this meeting, and I said to my daughter, they look really nice. And I think at Christmas time, that's the message we want to get across. If we want to revisit it to see if the contract can save us a few £1,000s, I think personally, let's do that in the spring, forward for the next budget when people aren't focused on Christmas lights. And I understand Councillor Draycott's point. A lot of these cost savings are going to hurt services going forward. And if we can have an explanation as to the cemetery, because on paper it looks like the cemetery is going to cost us less in Loughborough special expenses, but charges are going up. So we just want to know how much, what the mechanisms are there, or the mechanics are there. And I think so. If a report can come to the next Loughborough Area Committee on those two things, more than happy to support it for a future Loughborough special expenses review.
Yeah, would support that, Chair.
Right. So in terms of actually suggestions for this budget, are you then saying we're not going to put forward a formal suggestion for Cabinet?
We've got a proposal that was agreed and voted on regarding the two centres.
Yeah.
Possibly then a paragraph underneath about other issues were considered by the meeting. Further information has been requested. Refer to the Christmas lights and the Loughborough in Bloom to be explored, and a paper come to the next Loughborough Area Committee meeting on those matters.
Sorry, Chair, the Constitution is very clear that this committee is a consultative committee and cannot commission reviews or reports from officers.
That's ridiculous, really ridiculous.
Is So and they're saying then maybe not a suggestion, but a comment for Cabinet to note
Yes.
about further information that this committee would value in the future, further information on light. So just a comment. You can make a comment.
I think, Chair, you could suggest that Cabinet may wish to explore those options.
So make a comment. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So would the wording be that this committee suggests that Cabinet may wish to explore?
Yeah.
Those
two areas.
Right. Has someone got an idea of what the wording would be then?
Before you move on, Chair, I apologise. I don't have the raise hand function.
Right.
I haven't had for a long time. I share Councillor Mears' uncertainty about specifically raising the Christmas lights, because I think they do an awful lot of good to people's feelings of well-being, and I can't support a cut in the Christmas lights. So I think I can't support singling the Christmas lights out as somewhere to look for reductions. And so I think we need to be careful how we word that. I think a wider looking for savings that can be made, I could support that, but singling out Loughborough Bloom and the Christmas lights, I can't support that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Camps, did you want to make some comments?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just for the record, I can't support any reduction in the lights or the in bloom. Thousands of people get lots of pleasure from it, especially this past 2 years with the COVID. So I would be against that, any cuts.
So do we wish to proceed with this, or do we wish to alter the wording that this committee may wish Cabinet to explore where savings could be made in areas?
Chair,
it becomes very vague.
If I may, Chair, it sounds to me like what the committee is proposing is that you look for savings from unspecified areas so you can reinvest the money in other unspecified areas. And I'm not sure that's
a bit vague.
Well, I'm not sure that's the intention of members of the committee.
Yeah. So, well,
maybe just a general comment then, Chair, that all of the items on a number of items on the agenda cause the committee concern regarding reductions, and would ask Cabinet to explore if those savings could be mitigated or reduced. Just basically that. How's that for wording?
That'd be okay, Adrian? Does that sound?
I'm trying to articulate my understanding of what people are discussing, Chair, and I think my concern would be that, given the strong views some councillors, some members of the committee have expressed about some of the areas, specific areas where proposals for savings were identified, that if Cabinet and officers went away and said, well, we're going to propose savings from these areas and reallocate the funding to these other areas, councillors may object strongly in both directions. So, you know, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. If you save money from what, to increase funding in one area, you've got to reduce funding somewhere else.
But we're always asked as members, Adrian, if you want to propose something, you've got to find the money. That's what we're always told at budget meetings. So that's what we're trying to do.
But at the moment, Councillor Draycott, my understanding of what the proposal is you're asking Cabinet to save some money from unspecified areas to reallocate it to other unspecified areas.
No, to explore budgets to try and mitigate the impact on the Loughborough area expenses. That's all.
It's one budget, Councillor Draycott. So if you're going to the money to reallocate the money, it has to come from somewhere else.
No,
so
we're talking about the Loughborough area expenses. So we're asking Cabinet to explore the Loughborough area expenses as a whole to see if there's any room to mitigate the reductions in the other items of concern by the committee.
Which are unspecified.
Well, no, we listed them, the CCTV, the burial charges.
But
yeah, I think there's clearly kind of different varying views within this committee. It might be this is one thing that councillors on an individual basis may wish to comment on, rather than try and develop a collective view, which is going to be seems to be quite vague. I mean, the one thing that did come across was about the lack of information and whether more clarification should have been given in some of the items, explanations, wasn't it? That was a theme.
Yeah.
So for councillors to make perhaps comments on an individual basis, I know earlier on there was certain comments on certain items. I know, Mary, you mentioned was it item 1, 8, 15, or something that it would be useful to have a greater breakdown or elaboration of some of the details of that. So around, and if you want an individual proposal on CCTV or something like that, you do that as an individual councillor.
Well, if it helps, Chair, that we just a reference to the fact that members asked for more information regarding a number of the issues before coming to a conclusion on them, something like that, just a note or a comment.
Well, can we then make a comment then? We simply ask a comment that we need greater clarification in some of the...
Chair, sorry, can I just come in here? Is that okay?
Yes, Phil.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt that, because I think we're getting lost here in minute detail. I think the proposal was from Councillor Parton regarding potentially saving money from the Loughborough in Bloom and the festive lights and reinvest them, any potential savings into community centres. But I think we're not going to get support there, and I'm just going to ask Councillor Parton, did you want to withdraw that proposal? And then we can move on, or we should just go to the vote one way or the other, because we're just going around in circles here. Yeah. I agree with Adrian. I don't think we can note anything that says that is very vague. I think we can just either go to the vote on that one and move on, or leave it. Councillor Martin.
It seems as though we have reached an impasse, and there does seem to be very little movement in this budget for next year. So I think on balance, I'll have to withdraw the comments. However, at least it sharpens the committee's minds for next year, that we know the level of detail we need to go into and scrutinise, so that we're not in this position again next year, and that all the community centres are adequately funded, but we've got community venues and community safety covered off. So I think for now we will have to draw this to a close.
So
I will withdraw my suggestion.
Okay. So we just then part that to one side, and then at a later stage, if councillors on an individual basis wish to make comments, they can do so.
I think Councillor Draycott still has a hand up, Chair.
No, sorry. No, just not took it down.
Okay. So if we just then leave that to one side then and realise that councillors on an individual basis can come back and comment on that at a later stage. Okay, thank you for that. Any further comments then before we move on to Bedford Square? Nope. Thank you. Thanks for that. So at least I agree with Councillor Parton. It's been, although we went round this, around the houses in this one, it has kind of helped clarify in our minds what we need to know or we're moving forward for future. Okay, I think we've now finished with item 6, and so we'll time to move on to item 7, which is the Bedford Square Gateway project, and I believe that's Richard Bennett to give us an update.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good evening, members again. So just to recap on Bedford Square project, it is a project that will deliver improvements to the public realm within the Bedford Square, Wards End, Devonshire Square and Devonshire Lane areas, and it represents an investment of £3.8 million in the town centre. The project has been driven by meeting local business concerns and priorities, and can track its origins back through the town centre master plan. The improvements that are planned will make the area more attractive for visitors, residents, and will create a distinct, characterful and pleasant shopping-friendly destination, which will serve to boost trade. So that's the recap for you. So members may recall that the original plan was to complete the works in time for the November fair. And at the last briefing of the Loughborough Area Committee on the 16th of June, members heard that whilst construction commenced in February 2021, there had been a 6-week delay caused by Severn Trent Water replacing the water main serving Loughborough. And at that time, we reported the scheme was consequentially expected to complete by the beginning of December. However, unexpected issues which we reported on, which were found underground, so that's around the utilities and drains and other things, they required a redesign of the drains and carriageway, and therefore to minimise further delays, at the time we made a decision to bring forward Bedford Square North, brought it forward in the programme whilst we addressed those issues and to redesign the scheme. So in light of planned road closures for the project, the council and the Loughborough BID consulted traders and businesses over the summer, and that led to the introduction of measures to assist traders and customers, including a voucher scheme, which was supported by the council but led by the BID, and concessionary parking provided by the council, both for traders and for customers. The contractor was able to withdraw from the area to enable the fair to go ahead in November as planned, and positive feedback was received from traders along Ward's End, who said the lack of small stalls along Ward's End actually increased their trade. And showmen reported the arrangements for larger rides on Granby Street car park were welcomed and worked well both for the showmen and for customers. So as you know, the works recommenced after the fair, but they stopped again on the 3rd of December to respect the County Council's policy for no works to the highway to take place during the Christmas trading period. So as things stand at the moment, we are in what we call the shutdown period, when there's no works going on in the run up to Christmas. And as things stand, paving is completed in the Devonshire Lane and Devonshire Square West areas, apart from a very small part outside the Betfred shop. Paving on Ward's End West is completed, apart from the 2 pedestrian crossing points. Half of the paving down Ward's End East is completed. Most of the paving in Bedford Square North car park is completed, but some paving in between Perrotts and Bed City will be done in the new year. And the car park resurfacing itself will be finished in the new year too. And we are in the process of ordering the planters, which will go in at some point in the new year too. Now, members may recall that when Cabinet approved the scheme for the project in May 2020, it also approved a phased approach, subject to funds being available for each phase. And in December 2020, when the final tender prices were received, there was insufficient budget for the whole scheme to be delivered, and so Cabinet decided to progress only with part of the scheme, with the expectation that further funding would be sought from the Loughborough Town Deal or other sources. In October 2021, the council was successful in being awarded £1.7 million from the Town Deal, and an urgent decision was therefore taken to instruct contractors to build out the whole scheme as was originally envisaged back in May 2020. So the introduction of the Town's Fund grant will bring the budget up to 3.8 million in total, and will enable the Bedford Square South area and the area around the post office to be brought into the scheme, and those areas will commence in the new year. And so the whole project is now expected to complete at the end of May 2022. Thank you, Chair.
Oh, thank you for that. Now, does any member want any additional information or clarification of what we just heard? Or are we happy with that? Councillor Mear.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say that Bedford Square, I think it's dragged on a bit too long, but let's not focus on the negatives. I think we've been there with that. The positives there. I think closing the works for Christmas is very good. I had a walk down there today. Lots of traffic down there. Lots of cars parked, which hopefully means there's lots of shoppers in those shops. Can I just ask if the road surface, because if the works before the south part of the project is done, will it all be finished off so it looks complete there? Because the south part of the project is pretty detached to the works that have been completed, or is there some more ongoing work that has to be completed there?
Through you, Chair, I'm not quite sure what Councillor Mayor is driving at there. The carriageway element of the scheme, the road surface itself, hasn't been resurfaced yet. That's part of the programme to do that. And indeed, there are also some pedestrian crossing points which need to be put across Wards End in I think it's 2 locations across, which they haven't been built out yet. So works to build those will happen in the new year. But the carriageway resurfacing is one of the last things that is done to the scheme. Is that the point you were driving at?
Yeah, that's the point, because I was just thinking, because the part by the post office and the laundrette, if that's the area you're referring to, is pretty much disconnected. Yes, I can understand the crossing. So we could actually finish off all the other parts and then start that part. So it doesn't look like it's an ongoing escapade in front of Home Bargains and the rest of Devonshire Square.
Yeah, I think the issue there is one of the logistics of being able to work on the overall project for the contractors. So, for example, there's an element of Devonshire Square East outside the cinema, which won't be commenced until into the new year, and that will take place at the same time as Bedford Square South outside the post office and the chip shop. That area there will commence at the same time. So it's just the way things have worked in terms of, some of the delays that we've had to redesign the scheme elsewhere have meant that we had to bring forward Bedford Square North before we'd originally anticipated in the programme. So, the various different elements of the scheme have been rearranged to get the best possible use out of the contractor, so there's no idle time. You see what I mean?
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Yep, thanks for that. Councillor Mercer, you wanted to say something?
Richard, you mentioned the pedestrian crossings in Wards End a couple of times. Now, one of them has, on one side of the road, they've been intricately built. On the other side of the road, all the granite has been very neatly laid. Is there any logic to that? Because surely they're going to have to dig up all the granite that they've just put down. And secondly, is the road surface going to be flush with the pavement? Because the opportunities for anybody in a wheelchair or wheeled vehicle to actually get off the pavement on the road seems to be very limited unless they're on the same level. Does that make sense?
I think so. So the pedestrian crossing points are like a raised table that are flush with the pavement surface, and they'll be ramped access to that pedestrian table to enable vehicles to flow over the top. The road surface itself will be below the height of the pavement. Then there needs to be a curb line, as you would normally expect with roads. So it isn't the intention to make the tarmac surface flush with the pavement level.
So the actual point I made is, on one side of the road, the pedestrian crossing has been built with the bollards and the bumpy surfaces to tell people on a pedestrian crossing.
Right.
On the opposite side of the road, it's been very neatly built with no sign at all of the pedestrian crossing, with all the granite blocks neatly laid. So what I'm saying is, I couldn't quite see the logic of that, because that means they're going to have to dig up all the neatly laid granite blocks to actually lay a pedestrian crossing. Why didn't they do that in the first place, given that they knew that it was going to be there?
Through you, Chair, I think you're talking about the tactile paving crossing point, aren't you? I think I'm not familiar with the with where you're referring to. I
actually sent Sylvia a photograph of it today, so she knows what I'm talking about.
Right. I mean, if you want to drop me a line, I'll take a look at that and try and respond when I can orientate myself to the point in the scheme that you're referring to, and I can get an answer back to you.
Okay, and a quick other point is there seems to be a bit of confusion about where drivers can actually park, because I've noticed that immediately next to that, they were just driving up onto the pavement in order to park into the allotted spaces. So ultimately, that's going to will cause damage to the actual granite blocks.
Yes, through you, Chair, we are aware that this is happening. Some people are still driving off Ward's End into the Bedford Square North parking area, and when they drop off the pavement into the parking area, it's quite a drop off the pavement, and it is actually causing some damage to the block. So we've been talking to the contractor about how we can prevent that from happening wherever possible, and the county council as well. So we are aware that one or two people are doing that. So we're taking that on board and trying to find a solution.
Okay, thanks for that. Councillor Keith Harris, you've got a comment. You're on mute, Keith.
Sorry, I thought I'd done it. On a very rare occasion when I was driving last week, after there'd been quite a lot of rain, I parked in the north side of Bedford Square, and right behind my car, I couldn't open the back of the car because there was a very large, deep puddle there, which had accumulated some litter and leaves and whatever, and there didn't appear to be anywhere for the water to drain. So Richard said that side had been completed, but is there any further drainage work to be done, because that's going to recur at any point when we have a decent amount of rain?
Sure. And the drains are in for Bedford Square North car park, but it hasn't been resurfaced yet. So I'm not sure whether the finished surface profile will direct water towards the drains, but I'll take your point away and report it to the project manager just to ensure that it's recorded and it can be investigated.
Thanks for that. Any further comments or additional information required? Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, I think there's a problem with cars coming down past the post office, and instead of going into town, when they go right, and then it's a quick left into the car park, isn't it? Well, they're slowing down, and cars behind them are skidding and nearly hitting them at the backside. Also, when cars are coming out to get back onto the road to Beehive, there's no sort of signs to say car park. It's, if you know what I mean, Richard.
Yeah, so through you, Chair, I do know what you mean, Councillor Campbell, and that's not the first time I've heard that comment. I think that, the scheme has been designed and approved by the Highway Authority, who are satisfied that it's a design that meets the highway standards. They've not expressed any concern about slowing traffic wanting to turn into the Bedford Square North car park. Folk that are making last minute turns into the car park, or indeed people that are travelling too fast behind vehicles that are slowing, that is really a matter for police enforcement, I would suggest. So it's something that we're being watchful of. I suppose it's one of those things, as local people become familiar with the new layout, they'll be more wary as to the arrangements. But we can look at whether there's an opportunity to put some signage there, working with the Highway Authority to try and give some more advanced warning. It's perhaps something that we can take away.
Okay, thanks for that. Are there any further comments for Richard? Any questions? if there is nothing further, then that's the final item. So I think I can close the meeting. So thanks very much for attending.
Cheers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank
Well
you.
done.
Good night, all.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah. Goodbye.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Cheers.
Yes.
Bye.